What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one will break down what's going on with the overall market and give you guys predictions about what's likely to happen. Talk about the data that's dropping very soon, what you should be watching for the stock market. Before I break anything down about all this information, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, so the market had a very interesting day. I told you guys in my morning video that the SPY and the market would likely see a small pop in the morning, then a sell-off as time went on. Then some very sideways price action after that. That was very close to what happened, except I predicted the market would close very flat, maybe a little bit red. And instead, we got a pump to the upside at the very end for SPY, and SPY ended up closing just a tiny bit in the green, up 0.25%. So very close to predictions, but not exact. And overall, guys, still the market's looking very sideways. Not a whole lot is going on. And why is this? Well, we saw some Fed speakers today. I broke down specific things they said in my previous video. So if you want to watch what Bostic said or hear the things I said about him, you can see that in my previous video. However, basically the Fed speakers came, they caused some volatility, but nothing too massive. And then the market just kind of traded sideways for the majority of the day since. Now for Tuesday, I want to remind you all, we have Bullard speaking in the morning. And by the way, my time says 6 o'clock a.m. Bullard is giving a speech, but just remember that I'm in the West Coast, so my time is different from people on the East Coast and the New York time. And the most important time for the stock market is going to be Eastern Standard Time, or the time it is in New York. Okay, so for me, 6 o'clock a.m. is going to be 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. I'm going to keep using Eastern time just to refer to it in case you guys missed that. I just want to make that clear. He's going to be speaking, this Bullard guy is going to be speaking 30 minutes before the market opens at about 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. Why is this important? Because this guy tends to be one of the most hawkish Fed speakers. He tends to cause the market to slow down a bit. So make sure you're ready for that to start us off. Then after that, at about 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time, in the East Coast, we have the economic optimism report coming out. This may be pretty decent for the markets because so far optimism has been quite good. People are becoming more optimistic. They're looking at the data and seeing signs that inflation is cooling off, and consumers are becoming more and more optimistic as a result of it. Now, if this is the case, I mean, this data has not been affecting the market that much, so I don't really expect it to, but it's just worth noting. And then after that, there's not really anything else coming out for Tuesday. It looks like the market's just going to be waiting for CPI. So I do expect a very boring day for most tickers. I don't really expect too much price action, too much volume, because a lot of traders don't really make big transactions on days like this. But please remember, tomorrow is still going to be an important day. And here's the reason why. Because on Wednesday, we have CPI coming out 1 hour before the market opens. So make sure you're ready for this. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, 1 hour before open, we have CPI coming out, and core CPI, which are going to be very, very important. We also have a speech from Kashkari and a couple of things like that. So Kashkari is going to be one of the Fed speakers. Bostic is going to be giving another speech. So we have some Fed speakers coming out later on too, but the biggest thing is going to be CPI data. Make sure you're ready for this. If this is hot, the market's going to get a rug pull. If it's decent, the market's going to most likely either hold or start pumping. And I think the odds favor it being decent, but just to be safe, I will talk more about this tomorrow. I just want to inform you guys about this. This is going to be coming out for Wednesday before the market opens. So why is this significant? Because for Tuesday, this is going to be your last chance to exit a certain play. Exit your options if you want to. If you want to just like sell shares in something, this is going to be your last chance, because otherwise, if you're holding options past Tuesday, you're going to be holding them through Wednesday, and that's when CPI is going to drop in the morning before open. So you're going to be holding them through CPI. If you want to do that, that's your choice. If you want to exit them, Tuesday is going to be your last chance. So just be well aware of that. Now, anyways, when it comes to earnings, I just want to note that there's not much going on for Tuesday and Wednesday. It's all just very, very small. But for Thursday, okay, we have Progressive, we have a couple of others, we have Delta, PepsiCo, and then for Friday is going to be a big day. We have JP Morgan Chase, we have Citigroup, Wells Fargo, BlackRock. All of these things will affect how the market moves for Friday. Make sure you're ready for that for Friday. Anyways, now let's talk about the charts, what's going on with all these different tickers. All right, so for tomorrow, like I said, unfortunately, it's likely going to be a boring day, but I just want to remind you guys that boring days tend to be led by big days. This is what many of the pro-institutional traders tend to talk about, because when you look at the Bollinger Bands, just for reference, you will notice that, let me just close the EMAs, by the way. I think this is kind of in the way. Before we make big moves, right, the market tends to get very tight. And let me show you. So like right here, If you look at like, I don't know, mid-May, for example, SPY got very, very tight. And then it was just trading sideways for some time. Then a big move came after that, a big push up after that. Here it got very tight. Then we got a big move to the downside. It got a little bit tight right here. And then we got a big move to the upside in June. In mid-June, it got very tight and the big move came. Same thing happened in July. Before this big move, look how tight we got right here in the Bollinger Bands before a big move came. And now, right now, in the present time, the market's starting to get very tight. You can see right here, the Bollinger Bands are getting tighter and tighter. We're likely going to see them get even tighter tomorrow, and that's my prediction, because of more sideways price action. And then a big move is likely going to come like this very soon. A big move to the upside or downside, depending on CPI. All right, so what does that imply? Well, we're still in the tightening phase, which tells me that the market may just be very boring and very sideways going into tomorrow. Let me explain. I'm not expecting too much for tomorrow specifically. I think the market is just going to trade sideways and range trade, but then we may see a much bigger move by Wednesday. So what does this mean? We have resistance around this 440 area. If it breaks this, it could go a little bit higher. Maybe 442 is a possibility, but I don't really expect it to pump that hard. You could argue there is this like accumulation phase, so it is a possibility. If it breaks down, you'll be watching support at 439, then 438. If that fails us, there's 437.5, then 43. Basically, the 436.65 level is going to come next. I don't really see it holding like 437 if that breaks this time around. But I don't really expect it to test either of these really high or low levels. I think it's just going to be very tight and just trade sideways, kind of like today, be stuck between 440 and 438. Just go back and forth and back and forth. We may even get a very flat close tomorrow, maybe a somewhat red one, because we tend to sell off a little bit before CPI. Institutions tend to reposition and not really do anything too big. So I'm leaning more in that direction. I'm not really seeing too much for tomorrow, just boring sideways price action. Tesla's going to be a little bit more interesting because Tesla sold off to this support around 265, then bounced after that, and still is trading sideways, consolidating. But here's the thing about Tesla. Tesla has this nice gap down here, all the way down to this like 262 area. Let me just hide the drawings. I know I have a lot of support and resistance levels, but looking at the drawings, okay, or without the drawings, sorry, you're going to notice that we have this gap down here around this 262 area. Tesla's going to likely fill this gap if we break below 265. So if it breaks this, you're going to be watching that 262 level as a very important zone for Tesla. However, it's going to bounce if the whole market bounces after CPI. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. What do I see for Tesla for tomorrow? I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, it really depends on what level it goes to. If it breaks 265, it's going to drop more. But other than that, it's going to likely be very sideways and very choppy with the markets. So if it wants to break out, we need to try to hold above 270. If it does so, we could be seeing 272 being retested. But if it's not done selling off, we're going to be watching 265. If that breaks, it could sell off more. What do I predict is going to happen? Tesla has a tendency of popping near open, then dropping. It did this every single day for the past week and a half. So I am anticipating maybe Tesla's going to pop a little bit to about this like 272 area or so, reject and come right back down to like 268. Could drop lower. I don't know for sure. It could drop down to 265 again. We'll have to wait and see on that. In real time, and it's just going to trade sideways for the majority of the day. Now, if it sells off even more around this like 265 area, if it breaks below that, then 262 could possibly come if it sells off more, but I expect it to bounce around there and just come right back down. I'm sorry, right back up to where it was previously. So basically, very, very sideways price action for Tesla as well. I don't really expect way too much craziness like today. And I believe that we're going to see a big reaction after CPI. Same thing for Apple. I'm expecting this thing to be very sideways. Not a whole lot to say. I mean, you're going to be watching resistance at 189 flat, and that's a 200 EMA. Then 190 was going to come after that if it breaks above this resistance. There's also some resistance around 189.5, so watch that very, very carefully. If it breaks down, watch support at 187.5, 187, 186.5, then 186 flat. What do I think is, excuse me, sorry guys. What do I think Apple's going to do? I'm anticipating that Apple is going to most likely end up pumping a little bit, maybe try to test like this 190 area, then reject off of that, then come right back down and just continue to trade sideways. I think it's going to try to get a pop to almost 190 in the morning, get a rejection, and just continue to trade sideways, not really do much. That's what I'm anticipating for Apple. NIO is looking pretty good, and the reason I'm calling this out is because Janet Yellen has said some very positive things between the relationship between the US and China. And on top of that, NIO announced a new battery pack that they're going to be using. So we have a bullish triangle forming. It may have more upside for $11 coming at least very soon. Just wanted to note that. For the triple Q, same thing, very boring price action is what I'm anticipating. It's going to likely try to retest this like 368 level or come just below it around like 367.2, then reject off that. Come down to 365. If that fails us, it's going to come down to 364.69. Bounce off that and just trade sideways in a very boring manner. I'm seeing that for the triple Q as well. Nvidia is very tight. You can see it's just trading sideways. I mean, not really doing a whole lot. It dropped in the morning, then started trading sideways. It may pop again, retest like 425, reject off that, come down to about this like 416.5 level, break back up and close very close to 420, maybe very flat again. That's what I'm just seeing from Nvidia. Basically, a repeat of what happened today is what I'm anticipating. Same thing for Microsoft. I think it's going to likely see a repeat as well. Pump to about 333, maybe a little bit higher to this imbalance at 334, come right back down and just trade a little bit sideways, maybe a little bit in the green because we have a potential accumulation right here in this imbalance. So very flat, maybe a somewhat green day for Microsoft, but very, very flat. For AMD, this thing did outperform the market a little bit, get a very nice pump. It did drop with the market in the beginning, then just recovered after some bullish news came out. It has a potential bullish looking setup on this thing because when you zoom out of the chart, we have this imbalance around this 118 area. And I think there's a good chance it may be heading towards that after CPI. So I'm going to be watching, do we see this thing actually get the breakout? So the imbalance is like right here, this 118.67 area. I think it's going to head for that over the next couple of trading days. I'm especially bullish on AMD. But until that happens, though, it may trade very sideways tomorrow. Once again, not really do much. Be stuck between the 15 to 200, 111 to about 114, just back and forth, and eventually break out later on. That's what I'm seeing for AMD. Netflix, sideways price action, like I said before. I predicted we'd see some like upside for Netflix, maybe a green day, and that's what happened for today. It may retest 444, come right back down to 440, and just trade sideways after that. Last but not least, looking at coin. This is once again looking very sideways, not really doing a whole lot. It did try to break out a little bit, getting above this like $80 area. It may reject and come down to like 77 and bounce off that and just trade sideways. I'm anticipating a very sideways day again for this as well. I'm not really seeing anything too crazy on it. The 4 hour is about to turn bullish, so there's a chance it could close a little in the green actually, but like I said, it's just not looking that great. I mean, I'm not expecting too much for tomorrow. Baba may be bullish again for tomorrow. We had a target of about 94.6, not 94.88. Sorry about that. So I could see it coming all the way up here and forming like a cup and handle. That's also a possibility. Or it could already be forming the cup and the handle could be in the process of forming. We had some bullish news that came out involving Ant and not to mention Janet Yellen. So could pump a little bit more. This looks more bullish. This looks like an accumulation. I could see this thing going to 94 over the next couple of trading days. For Google, this is looking a little bit weak. We can see we got this break below the 200, which gave us the signal of it breaking down. There's also a possible head and shoulders developing. We also have this imbalance down here around 107. And not that it's going to crash that low. It really depends on how it reacts to 116 now. Now, we saw a lot of chop before around this 116.5 area, so like right here. We're going to be watching, does it manage to hold this level since we have this imbalance, or does it bounce or not? There's also, if it breaks down, it's also going to come all the way down to this 113 level, and potentially 110, then 104. I think the chart is looking a little bit weak on Google. Looks like this thing is forming a distribution, it's starting to curl downwards. So I think it's going to chop around first on this 116 level, then react to CPI. But just to be safe, we're going to be watching to see how the data looks to determine how this thing moves. I think tomorrow is going to be very sideways and still close a little bit red since it was looking very weak today. And we might see Google come down to the 113s very, very soon. But first, it may trade sideways tomorrow, maybe pump to about like 117 to 118, come right back down. And it is looking a little bit weak for the medium term. But for the long term, it's going to be more determined based off earnings. Earnings are going to be very big for it. For Amazon, there's not really a whole lot going on with it. It is starting to look weaker, but it could get a bounce right over here, right? It could try to bounce. Now, there's this head and shoulders that formed. We're getting very close to this like imbalance down here on this like 125 area. We could see a little bit more downside on Amazon before it tries to bounce, but it's not looking that bad. I mean, it's only down like 2%. That's not that horrible. We also have this imbalance that formed right here on 129. So is it going to bounce for 129 after CPI, or is this thing going to drop to 125, then bounce and come up to 129? It's got to be one of those two. I think ultimately it's going to come up to bounce. It may drop first and then bounce, or just bounce from here. But until then, it may just trade sideways first, and we're going to see what happens after CPI. It could be flagging here, so it might drop a little bit more to like 125 and then try to bounce. I think the odds do favor that, but just to be safe, watch for confirmation. For Meta, it has resistance now at this $295, $298, and $300 levels. for support, you're going to be watching this thing around 292.21, 290, and then 287. What do I think it's going to do? Well, it got a really nice bounce off 287. I was thinking it would bounce off. I had a target at 287 on Meta, and it actually bounced off that. I talked about that target yesterday. I think Meta is going to do this. It may cool off a little bit again tomorrow and retest 292. Then it may come down to 290, try to bounce off that, push up for like 295 to 298, reject off that, and then end up closing very, very flat again. I'm just seeing a very flat day for the market, not really too much going on. But then you have to remember, going into the next couple of trading days, I still believe CPI is going to cause a very big move, but things may be very boring until that finally comes. So please remember my advice. That is not that I'm giving any financial advice. My advice would be just as an educator in a way, not as a financial advisor or anything like that. But my advice would be, as an educator, to never ever give up on your dreams and to be very, very conscious of catalysts to come because they could cause unknown types of price action. And when that happens, you have to manage risks and be very careful. So just be well aware of that, because tomorrow is your last chance to get out of any options you could be holding, unless you want to hold them through CPI. It is risky, so just be careful. But like I said before, just be careful and do what you have to do. All right, guys, so I'll see you guys in the next video tomorrow morning. Market to the moon as the long term is still very bright, and peace out.